and welcome to the offices of Wellington NZ. It's really nice to have you here. My name's Jo Heaton. I lead the tourism team here at Wellington NZ. I know a few of you, nice to have you here. I've been here for a really long time because I've never found anything I want to do more than share Wellington with the world. So before Wellington NZ, I was the tourism trade manager for Tourism New Zealand for 6 years. I do need to deliver the health and safety briefing, which in the event of a shake, obviously it's a nice sturdy table, drop, cover, hold, and wait for further instruction. We'll take you to the mustering point. Bathrooms are just in the corridor just outside, and if there's a fire, follow us and we'll go and stand on the street a long way away so the men in tinfoil get easy access to the building. And just, I found a really nice whakatauki for today, which I thought was appropriate. So bear with me. Te manu kai I te miro, nona te ngāhere. Te manu kai I te matarana, nona te ao. And that is the bird that feeds on the miro. Theirs is the forest, the bird that feeds from the tree of knowledge. Theirs is the world. And I think it's a really nice one for learning and students. So you're here with us at Wellington NZ, which we're a regional tourism organisation, but we're also an economic development agency, which means that we look after placemaking or destination marketing, and destination management, but we also promote Wellington as a place to, or the region as a place to visit, to live, to study and to work and invest. Investing is important. So what does that actually mean in terms of what we really do? We support business capability. We help startups with business advice and mentors. We help attract talent to the city, provide business support, help businesses support source funding. We run civic venues like the St James and the Michael Fowler Centre, and maybe attract the acts that are going into those venues. And also part of our family is Creative HQ, which is a business incubation, innovation hub. And they work with everything from startups through to government departments. We attract major events, go the Foo Fighters, and film productions, run the Wellington Eyesight, and across all of that is our marketing team, and they act as a sort of an in-house advertising agency for the entire gamut of the things that we do as an Aotearoa EDA. Wellington NZ drives the Destination Pauneki plan, which is our destination management plan, and we work across the region and the business sector to deliver the regional economic development plan. So those are two key plans that drive the activity of our organisation. Tourism used to be about growing our destination and our visitor numbers. The RTO focus, or the Regional Tourism Organisation's focus, has really shifted over the last few years to destination management. And right across New Zealand, each of the 31 RTOs will be working to a destination management plan. And those plans are being developed with communities and with the people who live here. And they're all different because they're really indicative of the place and the people that live in our region. So Wellington's plan is quite different to Taupo's plan. We've taken the 4 well-beings approach to the plan, so that I always forget one: social, economic, environmental, and cultural. So in essence, tourism contributing more to the places where visitors come than it takes away. And because those plans come from the communities that they've been developed in, each one will be really different, but every one of them will have sustainability underpinning it, because it's just so important. Yeah. So sustainability, as I said, means different things in different regions, and so you'd expect what we do here to be different to a region that's got a national park in it or a really small population base. The Poneke Plan acknowledges Wellington's goal to be carbon free by 2050, and our plan has a number of initiatives that contribute to that. Amongst its 63 actionable items, which we're slowly working our way through. In some regions, sustainability could be about volunteerism or tree planting or measuring carbon or cycle track building or pest control programs. It could be, for Wellington, our sustainability is more effective of what you do in a city environment. So things like public transport, how can visitors intersect with that, waste management, recycling, obviously, upskilling tourism businesses, not only tourism businesses, but retail, hospitality, which all form part of that tourism ecosystem as well. Supporting businesses that pay their people appropriately, which is, I know, is one of the challenges that we're trying to address with tourism as a career option. And then Wellington NZ promotes the businesses that do those things through the marketing that we undertake. Tourism businesses are often small businesses, and I'm looking at Ryan here, but the owner is delivering the tours and they're taking the bookings and they're cleaning the vehicles or the bikes at the end of the day, training the guides, doing the marketing. And so it's really hard for small business in particular to lift their eyes out of the doing of every day and go, how am I going to make my business sustainable? So we've tried to help with that as Wellington NZ by setting up a sustainability program. So we piloted that back in 2021, and there are a couple of folks here that have been on that. So, and they hopefully will talk to that a little bit later on. Each business in that sustainability program was individually visited by Tourism Industry Association sustainability advisors, so you're starting to see a very virtuous circle here. And they developed a sustainability plan for their business and implemented it. So, and what came out of that was intriguing because it was so varied. We had some businesses offsetting and measuring their carbon. We had others working with their supply chains to eliminate waste, and I've talked at length about the lettuces that no longer come in plastic. One of the hospitality venues took out, they looked in their recycling and all they saw were plastic milk bottles, so now they've moved to keg milk. But the chance to have a look at their operations. Somebody else was using the family pigs to recycle food waste from tours. And other businesses realised the importance of paying the living wage to keep, or to attract and to keep their staff. We ran a second tranche of the program last year, which Stadlands was part of, with equally varied outcomes. And we're hoping to do some more in the next 12 months that perhaps also reach out into the hospitality and into the retail sector. Actually, Wellington City Council's already working in the retail sector, so we're working really closely with them as they try and help bring many businesses on that sustainability journey. And the program that we piloted and have subsequently run is now run across several regions in New Zealand. So those sustainability advisors are very, very busy up and down the country, but certainly Tauranga and Invercargill and other regions are also using what we've learned and applying it into their regions and changing tourism one business at a time. Even Ryan, who operates a cycle business and has always been really environmentally conscious, found a few things out of that he could introduce to his business that would would improve what you do. And I think nobody sets out to be a bad business, really, particularly in tourism, when we're so reliant on our environment for New Zealand's storytelling. It's the big attractor for New Zealand, and we know that. But businesses either haven't thought about it in the context of their business, or they haven't thought about it, or they have thought about it and they just don't know what to do. Where do I start? Because it's really big and complex. But we've got a number of businesses throughout New Zealand with tailored plans and who are working on things that are relevant to them and their business. You might have seen Tākina, the new convention and exhibition centre that opened last week. It was built with a real focus on sustainability. Now it's open, we're trying to influence conference delegates on taking the low impact transport options. So we've been working on a project with third year Victoria University students, Metlink and Tākina, to understand how best to use the Airport Express bus to bring those visitors into the city, or those delegates into the city. That's just wrapped up, and it's got lots of really great implementable ideas for us, and a few things that are probably going to take a little bit longer. But I said earlier that we also manage a number of city venues like St James and MFC. Events are one of the things that Wellington's really well known for. It's part of Wellington's DNA, and we love them. As an organisation, we are trying to work with the hirers of those venues to ensure that they are being sustainable, that they're not using lots of disposable one-off theming elements, the core flute and the disposable brightly coloured carpet and things like that. What can we do that's different and to lower the waste coming out of those events? Selling things in our venues that are procured from the local region, not generic big brand products, but something that speaks more to Wellington. And you just won't believe the amount of time we spend talking about water cups and the right ones and the most sustainable ones. But we go through a lot when you operate big venues. One of the things for the students that you work with, I've seen firsthand how much young people and young employees want to be in businesses that do have a sustainable future. I think sustainability has to be front and centre in a business, and especially in tourism businesses where we rely so much on our environment, and young employees want to be involved in that. So those are just a few of the sustainability things that we've been working on as Wellington NZ and with the tourism businesses and with the wider community on sustainability. I'll pop back to take questions at the end if that's all right. But wrapping up, I love developing new tourism talent. I had mentors and managers that really invested in developing me, and a shout out to Tim Hunter, to Greg Anderson and to David Perks, I can see you nodding, for everything that they taught me along the way, and I really want to pay that forward. At Wellington NZ, we've used the Cruise Ambassador Program as a way of bringing talent into our organisation, and tourism students volunteer to welcome cruise ship passengers across the season. They've then progressed into our information centre. They've gone on to work in our marketing and our digital teams, as in the trade team, representing Wellington at things like Kiwi Links, internationally at Trends, the big trade show that's just taking place in Christchurch. We've got our ex-staff working for Tourism New Zealand, both here in New Zealand and in offshore offices. They're in business events, bringing conferences to New Zealand or to Wellington. We've got ex-employees at Visit Britain and digital tourism agencies. and some are setting up their own tourism businesses as well. So the number of roles and things that are open to people who want a career in tourism are well beyond perhaps what they imagine when they first think about that being something that they want to do. All of those people I talked about that have passed through our doors as tourism students or tourism graduates, they've had a few things in common. They've all wanted to share their place, this place, Wellington, with the world. They have a curiosity about the world, and they all seem to tell really great stories. They're natural born storytellers. There's no career like it, and if you've got students interested in tourism, then tell them to do anything to get a foot in the door. Good people are really quickly recognised and elevated. So the last thing I'll do for this session is thank Go With Tourism for the opportunity, and thank you, because I couldn't do what you do in a million years, but thank you for the work that you do in bringing people into our industry, and thank you for inspiring the next generation of tourism talent. I'm looking forward to working with them.
Thanks, Jo.
Cool. I'll pop back. Who's next?
Moi.
Diary from Tourism Industry Association.
Yes, indeed. Alright. Okay, my turn. Kia ora everyone, my name is Diary and I'm a member advocate with Tourism Industry Aotearoa. Now I was a bit of a late ring-in today, so apologies if I'm a little unpolished. You may have had on your documents that Greg Thomas was meant to be here, but he's fallen in, so I've jumped in at the last minute. So I'm going to talk to you today about the tourism sustainability commitment. So much of what Jo mentioned there, I'm just sort of going to build on, and you're probably going to hear a little bit as well in some of the other presentations. So a little bit of background on TIA. So we are a member-based organisation. We're essentially the voice of the tourism industry. So we represent all sectors across the industry. We advocate, problem solve, imagine, champion, connect and partner. We do so much for the industry, and we are essentially, I guess, the go-between, the voice between our membership and our industry and government stakeholders and decisions that are made at that higher level that are going to influence our members. So we do collectively sort of what no single business or association can do on their own, just because of the range of sectors that we do represent in that space. And our vision is to lead the world's most sustainable tourism industry whilst upholding the mana of Aotearoa New Zealand and the people who live and visit here. So talking around the sustainability, the tourism sustainability commitment. So this commitment, it's based around the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. Sustainability on its own is no longer enough. It's been around a long time, but essentially there are still a lot of things happening out there that are doing harm in this space. So essentially it's still being caused. We need to move forward from doing less bad to restoring and rejuvenating everywhere in that area. So to look at this slide here, so the way we use the word sustainable has always sort of been holistic and full in nature from what that is. It's not simply sustaining something, but it's improving it as well. We want to sort of reword these things and talking about doing less bad. We want to say we want to do more good. So sustainability has always been around how can we make tourism better, but regenerative tourism, how can tourism make New Zealand better? And there's so much in that space that we can be looking at. Regenerative tourism ensures that tourism gives back more than it takes, and that's the focus that we want to look at going forward. So you may or may not be familiar with this, but the New Zealand Tourism Sustainability Commitment, so this was formed and developed in 2017 by industry for industry. In a nutshell, it's about taking an industry approach to sustainability, and the central premise of it is for it to be adopted really broadly across the sector. It's a values-based catalyst for change, and it's not a tick box exercise. It's a journey that everyone is on their own pathway within, and I'm going to take you through the basic principles of it and just show you what that means and how we're working with industry to ensure that this gets stronger and is a real focus point for businesses. I've switched my slides, sorry. So in defining tourism sustainability, we've sort of taken a bit of a scorecard approach, if you like. We've identified 4 interconnected elements: economic, host community, visitor, and environment. So they are going to all work in together. Why are we doing this? There's so many reasons to embed sustainability into your practices. Business reputation, as Joe mentioned earlier, people are looking for these things now. They're searching it. When they're looking for your products and tourism products, they're wanting to know what you're doing in this space. They want to know what's important to you, what your values are. There's financial considerations there, looking at the cost of, running your vehicles and things like that, those sustainable kind of areas, and from there. Talent retention, it was spoken about before, not just young people, but everyone wants to work for an organisation that is thinking about the future, that is regenerative, that's wanting to improve, and base it around their social licence, visitor satisfaction. All of these sorts of things have to be considerations for a business now coming in this area. So this is all on our website, and I'll share the slides afterwards. I don't expect you to read all of that, but it's essentially a bit of a breakdown for just what all of this looks like. We wanted to make sure that it was aligned with both national and international guidelines in this space. The United Nations Sustainability Development Goals, other initiatives like Future Fit, all aligned to the 4 capitals of the New Zealand Treasury's Living Standards frameworks as well. So all of these things have played a role in determining what we wanted to focus on here. So we've got the 4 pillars, and underneath those 4 pillars we have 3 subheadings of areas that just getting businesses to look at that. And we don't expect people to be able to look at this and go, yep, tick, tick, we're doing all of this right now. But it just gives you something to think about. You might already be doing this, or you might never have even thought about this. And that's the whole purpose of signing up to the commitment, is that you can find your place in it and work in with what works best for you. So what we wanted to make sure that this wasn't just a document that people can kind of read and look and go, yep, that's fine, this is what we're doing. We want to be able to actually have people to commit to something and have actionable goals out of this. So having a sustainability plan with goals for all the 12 commitments is really important, and there's further detail on our website about how you can do that. There's suggestions for actions, there's suggestions for plans that you can make within your business, regardless of the size of it, about how you can put this into your everyday. You're able to make measurable progress towards the goals. So one of the areas, obviously, in the commitment is around reducing carbon. There's a lot of noise around the carbon goals these days. So it's actually really easy to do, and there's tools on there. There's free calculators that you can, and you'll be amazed. You've never done it before. You can find what your own carbon footprint is just in your own daily life, let alone your business. And it's actually really quite enlightening to think, by making these tiny wee tweaks, I can actually make a significant difference. And if everybody, took that on board, the overall results would be huge. So TIA send out, we do an annual survey, and then also people who have committed, signed up to the commitment, also do an annual update on their progress. It's not about TIA judging you or giving you a grade or anything like that. It's about being accountable for that, and actually being able to look back and saying, okay, well, this time last year, this is where we were sitting in this space. These are the changes that we've implemented, and this is where we've got to on there. And I'm sure these guys will be able to speak to that shortly in their space. So And another one of the big parts is telling communities and visitors about the sustainability stories. This is what it's all about. Tourism is about storytelling. This is just another tranche of that. People want to know what you're doing. Share it on your websites. People are, they're searching for these sorts of stories. The actual word ecotourism has absolutely shot up. In Google search ranks, it's just into the millions of what people are looking for when they go on a holiday. So these are just sort of brief actions there of what we're trying to embed. Currently, we have about, at last count, I think it was about 1,600 tourism businesses signed up to the TSC. Our goal is to have every tourism business signed up. It doesn't cost anything, it's free, it's just something that you can commit to. We've got, you can use these logos and that. We want to get that out there. We want to show that we are actually on a path to making real change and improvement here. So to break it down just a little bit more, so in the economic space, under the economic pillar, there's all of these things to think about. It's not economic or it's not just environmental, they all play a role, they all interconnect in here. I think COVID was a bit of a reality check, obviously, in that economic sustainability space. A lot of businesses that actually got themselves through, well, they are economically sustainable because they've taken steps to manage that from there. Looking at, are you operating sort of ethically? What types of code of conduct, a business has signed up to? What are you believing in and what's impacting your business in that space? Under the visitor pillar here, measuring visitor satisfaction. That's a massive one. You can get a lot of feedback, from visitors, and so we're really encouraging all of our tourism businesses to embrace that, to ask. Don't be afraid to get that feedback, positive and negative. It can all be really constructive, and from that, and measuring that, and being transparent about it as well. Monitoring and responding to feedback comes into that as well. Sharing Maori language and culture. Now, this is a huge one. I think that in a lot of parts of New Zealand, we sort of take it a little bit for granted, but for an international visitor and domestic, not just international, a lot of domestic visitors who don't have Maori culture around them are fascinated by it and love when a tourism business actually brings their story into their history. So we really encourage that. Just tell your story, inspire visitors about what made you go into that business, where you started, where you are now, kind of where your sweet spot is, why you do it, because we're all in it for the passion, Community. So this one has been a really big one and continues to be a really big one right now. We have a pillar called Employer of Choice, and that is around attracting and retaining great staff, and that couldn't be more prevalent right now coming out of COVID. We're in a severe workforce shortage across the industry. It's getting better, but there's a lot of work needing to be done. So businesses have really had to look at their own processes and systems, and what are they doing to be an employer of choice. There's so much out there. We're wanting businesses to really take a good look at what are you offering and what are you doing to take care of your staff, to hold on to them, to grow them. Professional development's a really big part of that as well. It's not just all about pay. Obviously that comes into it. Part of the employer of choice, we support people paying at least the living wage in that, and by signing up to the TSC you are committing to paying at least the living wage. In our last TIA workforce survey, we asked the question about the living wage, and over 70% of them said they were paying more than the living wage. So those are really important things, especially within schools and things, when you're trying to change that perception that a lot of it's just entry-level roles, that it's not, there's so much opportunity in there. So we really encourage that. But as I said earlier, it's not just about pay, it's about those added benefits in that space. Community engagement. This comes really into it. Do locals love what you do? One prime part of the sector that comes to mind is cruise. There was a lot of noise around the cruise sector before cruise ships were coming back. Many communities really supportive of it, others not so much at all, didn't want the ships back, had got really entrenched in bad media stories and things like that about it. So it's really important that these tourism businesses are bringing their locals and their communities along on their journey to understand what makes it tick, what they're doing in that space, that it's not just all of the potentially negative stuff you might read in the media, that there is some really good work happening in that space. and sustainable supply chains. So knowing where your goods are coming from and being brave enough to sort of voice that and influence it. If we get a big enough voice, Joe was talking earlier about, wrapping around lettuces and things like that. If there's enough people, enough businesses that are saying, you know what, we don't want this, we want to do this, they will listen. Suppliers will listen because they want to do good as well. Sometimes it is about a cost factor, but everybody wants to do the right thing. So it's about supporting it and sharing that message in from there. And then the environment, this is no secret to anyone here. Restoring nature. There are so many things happening in that space, and I'll dive into that a wee bit deeper shortly. But there are so many groups out there doing great things for the environment, and it's so easy to get involved. And if you don't know how to get involved, you've just got to ask the question around, your other networks around tourism businesses and networks. The environment is what brings people to New Zealand. That's still that key number one thing, so we really need to look after that. Carbon reduction. Carbon in itself is a huge goal, and there's a lot of goals around there to be, net zero carbon by 2030, 2050. There's nationwide goals, government goals, global goals in that space. It's very much front of mind for a lot of people. As I mentioned, and I can talk to it later or add a couple in the presentation, there are easy free calculators, and the first thing to do is to just measure it. There is cost around offsetting sometimes. You don't need to go that far. Sometimes it's just about measuring, so then you can reduce. If you don't know what your own carbon footprint is, how are you supposed to reduce it? So there's some really interesting tools out there, that we'd be happy to share some detail on that. And eliminating waste, it's that there's so much, in this space, and I have another slide there, but there's so many simple things that you can do, and recycling comes into that, but also just making better choices in what you use in your business, and from there. So restoring nature, that is the fattest bird I've ever seen. It's just like a big circle there. I don't know where they got that image from. Yeah, he's doing pretty well. I think by the looks of that. So planting trees, supporting predator-free projects, restoring waterways, so many conservation programs. DOC's doing some great work in that space. So they can't do it alone. They need the buy-in of the whole industry, and there's so many operators and tourism businesses that's an everyday occurrence. It's a natural thing that they're doing each day, each week, each month. Team building exercises, all that sort of good story stuff, and share it. Get it out there and get other people involved. And connecting visitors with local restoration. So that's another really key thing, is that visitors want to be part of that. They want to come to a country where they can feel like they are doing good and they're contributing to that. Talking about carbon and things like that, there's no hiding the fact that New Zealand is a really long way away from everywhere else, and you have to get here by an aircraft, and it's just how it is. So we're never really going to be able to completely take that away. So by ensuring that visitors have the greenest, most sustainable, regenerative experience they can while they're here, they can then get back on that plane to go home and be like, you know what, I've made a real difference, and this was worth it, and I don't need to feel bad about my carbon. So waste elimination. So that image there that you can see that was found in the floods over on the west coast down in Fox Glacier a few years back, and so that was part of all of the rubbish. Now that thing is about 30 years old, and look at it hasn't even broken down. The colours are still bright as anything. So that just shows, and you think about how many little butter things that you see at buffets, at restaurants and things like that. And it's interesting to note some hotel restaurants you go to now, and they have changed that. You just get like a little blob of butter and a little recycled piece, and it's just little simple things like that to bring that attention. So there are waste audits you can do. You can have goals around it. You've got to think about that whole life cycle of a product. Can this be used again, or is it just a throwaway society type thing? And look at how you can change that. So commitment to action. A lot of people are already on their own journey, and that's the most important thing that we really encourage within the TSC is there's no right or wrong. It's not, you shouldn't be at this point in your journey. It doesn't matter if you haven't even really started, because chances are you probably have. You just haven't thought about it before. So What are you already doing? How are you telling people about this? Share those stories, get excited about it, because other people are, and it's really top of mind for so many visitors and tourism businesses around the place, and incoming students and things. Young people are looking for that. They're passionate about it, and they want to know what businesses are doing in that space. And what will you do next? Think about it in the long term, in the short term. What are you currently doing now, next week? What's your 5-year goal, sort of thing? So, as I said, there's no right place to be in that journey. Just you start somewhere and you keep going from there. And I think that's the last slide. That was a very brief, quick overview, and I'm sure the others will build on that. So
thank you, Dora.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Ryan, I'm from Switched On Bikes, so I run a bike rental company based on the Wellington waterfront. So bike rental is a very simplistic kind of part of what we do. So we do bike rentals, we also do guided tours in Wellington. I also import electric bikes and then sell them to other bike shops around the country. We also develop e-bike GPS trackers for that can plug directly into e-bikes as well. But tourism is kind of where it all started, and that's most of what I spend my time doing. So that's us down on the Wellington waterfront. On a busy day, all of those bikes are out. On a rainy day, they are not out, just sitting outside. But we always keep ourselves busy. So, and I started in 2015, and so that's a small number of bikes. We have around about 100 bikes that we work with. I've always been interested in sustainability. It's just kind of like so it's not something that I learnt as I was running my business. It was just, I was into it before. And so when I started my business, sustainability was just part of every decision that I was making. But I never really talked about it, and I never got any certifications, and I never measured it as well. So during COVID, we with Joe and Wellington NZ, we participated in the Wellington Sustainability Project or pilot, and so what that did was encourage me to think more about the actions that we already take, to measure what we could, and also to get some certification on it. So I thought I would mostly just talk about the little projects that we have done, and hopefully by doing so, it's kind of interesting things to talk about when you're talking to students. So there's all the details behind it, but we have found that through the actions that we're taking towards being more sustainable, you get to create some quite cool connections and little stories throughout it. One of the things we did was to measure our carbon, and we always thought that we were a low emitting business. So I was like, well, why bother measuring it? Why bother getting certified if we know that we don't really emit much carbon? So, but we did do the process, and it was easier than I thought. It was just about getting around to it, and a couple of cool things came out of it. One, we did have really low emissions. Yay. Good for us. But we didn't know that before. We were just guessing, so we didn't talk about it beforehand, because I knew I was taking these actions, but we never measured it, so I really didn't want to greenwash, so we didn't talk about it. And so once you have that certification, then you can start talking about it. And we got certified through ECOS, and they said, okay, so you have your emissions that you haven't reduced, and so you need to offset, and we offset more than what we emit. And there was a project that they support called the Rameka Forest Carbon Project, and so those offsets can go directly into a native forest that's in Golden Bay, that's run by a family or some brothers and other collection of people who are kind of like the founders of mountain biking in New Zealand. So the mountain biking community really know the Kennett brothers, and they write books on riding around New Zealand. So we're like, oh great, they actually run a carbon offsetting project of native trees that is at the top of the South Island. So we were able to contribute to that. Waste is, I always find waste and recycling incredibly boring to talk about in terms of sustainability. It's kind of like, it's the easy thing to talk about. If you haven't really delved into sustainability, you're like, let's recycle something. Yeah. But we found that we always just recycle, of course, but what we found was that some things we couldn't recycle. So tyres and tubes for us were the main things that we didn't have a good solution for. We came across Road Worn, and so they're a Wellington not-for-profit, and they make things out of recycled or old tubes and tyres and any bike component, and then make it into belts and jewellery and bracelets and I don't know, anything and everything. It's really cool. And what they do is they provide employment to people who would otherwise face barriers to normal employment. So they provide a really awesome service for people who are struggling a little bit within around Wellington, and so they take the tyres and tubes from us, and pieces of chain and bike frames and whatever they need. But we also kind of wanted to take a little bit one step further and say, well, we don't want it to be that a community organisation just takes away our waste, and there's an idea that waste shouldn't be free. You shouldn't be able to have something and then just drop it and leave it. So what we do is we pay them per tyre and per tube for them to come pick it up from us, and that's cool. So we get an interaction with them coming to our store. It values that waste for us, and then it also gets reused as much as possible as well. Darcy's a character. We started working with Darcy because he started a little business called the Tiny Plastic Factory. So he would recycle plastic himself and then make it into things or sell it. He stopped doing it because he's someone who loves projects and then moves from one to the other. So the current thing that we're working with him on is e-bike batteries. So e-bike batteries have a certain lifespan on them, and then what do you do with them at the end of that? So there are recycling facilities that we can use, but it's better to try and reuse them. So with e-bike batteries, usually you've got one little bit within the battery that doesn't work and the rest of it's fine. So Darcy comes and collects them from us, and then he pulls the battery apart and then takes out the bit that's broken, or he'll take out everything that's good and then put it into a new battery. And so the two things that he's building at the moment, one is a cargo bike with a big stereo system in the front of it for like dance parties, and the whole stereo that can play for hours is powered by recycled battery cells. So I think that's kind of cool. Yeah. And then the other thing is that he has a garage, his bike workshop, and he's building like a home power bank in his garage because there's no power to the garage. So he's building his own big power bank with recycled e-bike batteries. Kaicycle we've worked with for years. So one of our employees, she started working for Kaicycle as they started, and they were towing around a trailer, picking up food scraps that will then be composted with a regular bike. It lasted for about a week or two, and so we said, can we use one of our bikes for Kaicycle to carry around their the trailers and the compost. So we rent them a bike and a trailer, and they've been our kind of a longer standing customer since 2015, and that's in Wellington, of course, and then so as well as them providing a transport solution to them, they're a really good customer, and also they take away our food scraps from our staff kitchen as well. You'll see them around town now. Aotearoa Rebicycle is another local organisation that we support. So sometimes we give them bikes, like the one he's holding there. So we often will give them parts that we aren't able to sell to customers, or looking a bit scratched or whatever, not quite good enough for a tourism rental fleet. So they take a lot of our parts and they'll put them onto other bikes that they fix up. So their whole organisation takes bikes that would that people don't want anymore, donated bikes and parts, fix them up by a volunteer crew, and then give them to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford bikes. So they work heaps with kids, and they work a lot with refugees into Wellington as well. So we could have sold that bike on Trade Me, but it would have been a pain in the butt to sell it on Trade Me. And it's like, it feels really nice just to be like, here you go, here's a nice working bike. In the this came out of the tourism sustainability project. It was like, what organisations do you contribute to and partner with? And we thought, well, we give lots of little things to a lot of organisations, lots of vouchers, supporting raffles and that kind of thing. We thought, actually, this is probably a organisation that we can support, so we give them an annual financial contribution, and then we give them $5 per mountain bike hire that we do. So Trails Wellington build trails around Wellington, but when you build trails, you also plant trees and you do pest management as well. So we support them, and it's a really nice partnership with a local organisation which is very fits well with our business. And that's our crew, our colourful crew. Everyone who is involved in our business is kind of interested in it because of the values, because they're into bikes, they're into sustainability. Most of them have travelled quite widely, but it's not necessarily the reason that they want to be part of our business. I think that we attract good people because of the values of our business, and because you can look on our website and you can see our values. An interesting thing, when we did our carbon audit, there was no, you had to say how your staff get to work. Do they drive? None of them drive. It was easy, like 0. And on that, our business doesn't have any motor vehicles either. So so we have 100 bikes, and things go wrong sometimes, and we run it all with no vehicles. But we do that by not owning any vehicles, but we do that by using bikes and trailers as much as we can. We're located close to the train station and the bus station, so we encourage people to find us by taking the bus. But we use Mevo and City Hop, like car share services, when we need to use a vehicle, because sometimes we do. But it means we don't have to own any vehicles, which is really nice. So it starts with them, I think. They make it happen.
Cool.
Does anyone ask any questions, or how do you want to do this? I'm not sure if people do or not. That's
your choice. Where do you go? Like, where do you when you set up tours? I'm trying to find ways to entice kids to do tourism school. And I think I'd love to do something Wellingtonian.
Yeah.
And it'd be I wouldn't do it during winter season, but spring or summer would be a great time to get kids out and about. So and we also run at the end of our school year, we run an EOTC thing. So that would be another option, for the juniors when the seniors are all gone. So where do you kind of take people on tours and that type of stuff?
So we just have 2 tours. One starts from the Wellington waterfront from our store, and then it goes follows the bays, and then it goes up onto Mauri, and so you can look down, see the planes landing and taking off, and then we come back around to the city, and then we have a shorter tour that's just on the Wellington waterfront. And most of the people who take that tour are international visitors, and most locals rent out bikes and do laps.
Kia ora nō koutou, ko Sam from Ingoa. My name's Sam, and e mahi ana au ki Staglands Wildlife Reserve. I work at Staglands, which is in Upper Hutt. Unfortunately, no one bikes or walks to the location. It's quite exciting, the challenges that you find. There's the way to be the best version of something, and then there's let's be realistic, this is what we're working with, and just to take baby steps. But very big steps were made quite some time ago by John Simster. He's our founder. The owner still lives on site. We were established in 1972, so a wee while ago, 51 years ago, and this car here is actually the car that was used to travel overland and then ship. So they came to the UK, him and his partner at the time, and settled in Aotearoa Valley eventually, and the car eventually stopped working, so now it's a great little playground for kids to damage the door, as you can see. That's a really cool part. My job putting that back on. Adaptive reuse is definitely part of the kaupapa. That's the stuff I was just saying. So the whole kind of thing, given the time when they were setting up the park, the main focus that John Simster had was to create like a space for people to interact with nature. When he was a kid, he had this amazing interaction with the bird, and he was just like, man, this is just the coolest thing. Like, everyone should be able to have this kind of experience, and as a result, just from like one little moment, that can set you up for being in sustainable tourism, or whatever it is in your life, just caring about the environment, being a kaitiaki of Aotearoa. This image here is from a movie set. They had a logging town, some film, I don't know, in the 90s, early 2000s, and then they're like, okay, right, done, they're going to pack it all up, and John's like, oh, actually, I'll have that, we'll use that. And so we have a settlement area that is starting to sort of wear away and showing its age, but like that's kind of part of the charm for the place. So it's quite cool. No one lives there, but we pretend like it's a functioning little village. As it's been alluded to already by our other speakers, the tourism program, see, nice little logo there. It was quite cool. So much like yourself, like the sustainability is just, it's a no-brainer. It just is. You can't not. So being part of this program, for me, I was super excited because I was like, great, I want to be doing this, and we kind of have been doing it, but it's just a matter of putting a label on the logo or accountability, and for other organisations and businesses to see, use it as a way of tracking progress and that sort of thing. We did do our carbon footprint, which was a number here that doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but I can do percentages. So again, we use a lot of fuel. With the tractors, can't be electric yet. Or diggers or those big machines, and we do have a lot of staff commuting to work from Upper Hutt and further afield, so that's something that is tricky to manage. But the things that we can manage are our waste to landfill and what was the other one? Energy, electric and LPG. So electric and LPG is 15%, fuel, diesel and petrol is only 7%, not including the commute, so that's actually quite a small amount of fuel use. We're always very particular, but there's a cost associated as well with petrol and diesel, as we're well aware in this ever-evolving environment we find ourselves in. So that was nice and small. Waste to landfill, though, 77% of our entire carbon footprint can be allotted to the waste, which is easy to fix, she says. Is it? We also have some e-bikes, really, really cool. We use Obco. I don't know if we're allowed to name drop businesses here. Obco, and it's like a motorbike. You pull the throttle, but it's all electric. We plug it into charge, at the end of the day, and yeah, it's primo because if you've ever been to Staglands, you've got the park and then you've got the shed where everything is stored that you need for the park, and they're not very close together because we need to have a car park for our visitors. So that's awesome to not have to carry it all. Sustainability isn't just about the environment, it's about people as well. So if we're all worn out by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's going to be really hard to get any work out of us for the rest of the day. So utilising tools and technology in a way that is positive for the environment and for your staff. That's the one. That's the tahi. The Te Aki Promise and Te Ao Māori. I last year was very lucky to take some language classes at Te Wānanga o Aotearoa in Porirua. So I had an opportunity there to further develop my reo Māori and implement it in a lot of our products. So our tractor trailer rides, our junior ranger experience, just general comms, phone, ticket office, just all the time if I can. Just that kaitiakitanga and with these new labels and the Te Aki Promise, it's always been a part of what Staglands is and represents, but it's just aligning it with the framework that other tourism places can sort of showcase, as you're saying before, about like proof that you do the thing. So we did, so waste reduction is 77%. It's just huge amount of waste. So we did a waste audit late last year. I've written October. I don't know if that's when I did it, but that's when I digitised the data. Very busy with a small team, a lot of money to do. The amount going to landfill was a large amount. The here we go. Currently produced 253. Yeah, this is from Wendy's data, but it was just some stuff was going to landfill out of ease, that was just how it was done, and no one had sort of had the opportunity to stop and go, well, can we do this differently? It's, if anyone, even in your own home, if you do a waste audit, I highly recommend. It's eye-opening. It was something. So anyway, we kind of wanted to flip it and figure out how do we get the landfill to be the small pie piece and the composting and recycling was just the better end of life to be a lot bigger. There were a few ways that we could do that, and one of them was removing the bins. If we don't have bins, then you can't have rubbish. So you're like, no rubbish. We still have some bins, but by not having so many bins around the reserve and communicating with our members through newsletters and through our signage, it's quite normal for people to go to parks and have to take everything away with them, and it just allows everyone as a like wider community that engage with that park space to just think, actually, I'm going to bring this because that's easy to pack up in a container or that sort of thing. Or eating on site and then you don't have any packaging whatsoever, you just got what's on the plate, the dishes go back to the kitchen, cool. 24 bins were removed from the reserve. What I loved about this was one of my jobs on Sundays and Mondays to empty all the bins, so job's gone, great, hasn't really, but the 24 bins part has gone. The team at the time, they're like, you can't remove all the bins because there's going to be rubbish all in the park, and we had a hui about a month ago before everyone was sick, when everyone was on, and we talked about this and sort of I was pulling the data, and they're like, actually there's been less rubbish, it's been really cool, and I was like, yes. So getting that buy-in from the team as well, you get a lot of people that are interested in the idea, but they just don't really know how to do the idea, or those actionable tasks are where the tricky thing comes in. A huge part of our waste amount or proportion was our stock feed wastage. So if you're not familiar with baleage or grab a bit of water. When you drive past a farming area and you see those big marshmallows or silage wrap things. So baleage is just pretty much the same for the sake of argument, smaller and slightly different cut and harvest. Just over 10% of our waste was just the twine and from both the hay and the haylage and the bluey-green plastic wrapping. So that can't go through normal recycling streams, that has to be through a particular program. Another name drop, Plasback is the company that takes these and collects them. We do have to separate them into unique waste streams, so one's the wrapping, one's the twine, and we haven't actually filled up a sack big enough yet for it to be collected, but it's kind of like with council rubbish bags. You just buy a bag, you fill it up, and you say, oh yeah, it's full, and you pay the fine and the fee rather, and they take it away. You feel good about it. But yeah, it's great, like we don't have to call anyone to empty the skip as frequently as what we were having to do, so that was super cool. Also worth mentioning too, with the way that the seasons change and supply chains, I suppose, is we used to feed a lot more hay than we did haylage, because it's easier to store, it's easier to like lift, and you can buy it like at low cost at a time and store it. Baleage you can have more readily available throughout the year, has a higher cost point, higher environmental impact in terms of the waste, but if you don't have the space, then that's what's going to happen. Or if there is no hay because of the way the weather has been, or there's a small supply, then that's your only option. You can't not feed the animals. So yeah, we did have more baleage waste last year than what we have had in previous years, so that's worth something to consider. But the great news is it's not going to landfill anymore. The short version of that story. Yeah, back on that composting kaupapa is our waste, so our feed waste, so that's manure, but also any wasted hay, straw, bedding, shavings, sawdust shavings, that sort of thing. We do have a partnership with, they've got a company, I don't know what the name is, but Anton, he lives down the road. It's kind of like that country. Yeah, Anton and Erica, lovely family. We give them our chickens, it's great, it's awesome. Anton did work at the reserve previously, and he set up his own permaculture. So we will take our manure trailer and drop it off on his lawn, not in the front, but in the designated drop-off spot. And yeah, it gets turned into this most amazing, very productive space. And sometimes I'll shovel up a bit of the horse manure and take it home for mum for her roses. So it's like nothing is wasted, and I don't quite put a price on it other than like my freight of taking it to my mum. But it's cool to think about, like, waste is not rubbish, it's just not yours anymore. What's its next purpose? You know, what's the intention of this, or what can this do? We're not all there yet though. I'll start at the bottom. Food scraps, 3.4% of our waste. This really surprised me. Normally, like food rubbish, you expect to be quite a lot, but that is quite a small proportion of our waste. So that's sort of the bottom of the list in terms of tackling the big things first, and we'll start getting it sort of fine tuning it towards the end. Paper towels. This is massive. I don't know if people like pull out one and then they go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but like when we're very busy, people wash their hands, hygiene's important, great. But the amount of napkins and paper towels where we did that waste audit was just insane. It's nice it's not heavy when you pull it up, that's the only nice thing about it. It's just quite, anyway, for me that was the biggest wow. We don't have commercial composting available to us yet in terms of the resources and time. We have trialled it in with the manure, but the proportion of them, it's not matched up nice enough. So a large proportion of this is still going to landfill. What I suggested in sort of like bringing in these numbers was, why don't we look at taking them out the way that we took out the bins, and not with people walking around with wet hands, but to have more hand dryers in place. Only one of our bathrooms has a hand dryer at the moment. Those are very slow. I like it in the winter because it's warm, but other than that, like, it takes a long time. The positioning of it isn't the best place either. So there's this whole bathroom redesign that sort of almost needs to be achieved for best case scenario. At the moment, we're using bathrooms that were concreted and set up in 1972. So they're great. They're still flush. Like, the plumbing's good, but the way that it's used and the demand on the resources will sort of come to light on what changes we need to make to meet those goals. And then food packaging. This is the biggest pet peeve of mine all the time in any space. Like, I just hate it. Like, it's just unnecessary most of the time. And yeah, last year we had a colleague and the team leader in the CAF go on maternity leave. We had a maternity leave cover, but she's spending more time with her family, so we've had not quite consistent staffing in that space, and so we haven't been able to implement anything substantial, which is very much status quo, learning that, lots of staff cover. So the tricky thing with a small team and wearing lots of hats is some people don't wear the sustainability hat for very long because they have to put on the operational hat. The other thing, gosh, I talk a lot. I didn't think I was going to mess out of practice. So I must talk very softly to the animals. We have a big project underway, I've been told. Well, no, I actually saw the plans this afternoon. The log house that the cafe and ticket office that was actually built from the forest, from the trees that were felled there locally. The general manager, she milled the timber, so everything sort of kept quite local. The firewood that we use for the barn for functions and for the cafe, they're all trees that are felled in the forest too, so keeping it all in the family, I guess. But it's just not big enough, just like the bathrooms don't hold enough space. So once we have a bigger kitchen, then we can have better dishwashing facilities to completely eradicate that non-reusable stuff. There are a couple of other again and reusable. They do both bowls and plates in the city. It's really easy to be food sustainable in the city. So I'm just trying to bring the city out to the farm, but whilst also still being relevant to what those needs are, because there's a whole lot of other stuff outside of that. But those conversations are happening. Excuse me, gosh, I better not be the last one to drop with my crew. Right, small steps. I got this photo especially because the piglet is stepping up. Oh, it's perfect. Pretty much is what I've already spoken about. Keep reducing that waste and supporting visitors to do the same. We have, what have I got here? Let's have the dishwasher. I did want to do another audit before July school holidays, but given the staffing situation in the parks, I don't think that's going to happen. But even being able to cut out those, the plastic and the reduction in a few things we've got, I think that 77's probably already dropped to 50 without us having a true measure. So that's, super, super cool. I'm stoked with what we've been able to achieve so far. And that's only sort of 7 months in, but I think what that tourism program sort of assessment marker allowed us to see was what we've already done and what we've always done, and just sort of to continue to do so. But also in a way, what you were saying, Ryan, to just let our visitors and our supporters know that we do that, because there might be an assumption, or if you talk with someone you go, oh yeah, of course, but if people are actively looking for that, then we need to make that available to them to know that that's who we are and what we do. That end.
Cool, thank you.